We're going to take a look at compound interest now. Particularly, we're going to look at future value. So in this particular problem, we have a situation where an individual, Jack, borrowed $2,500 at 5% compounded semi-annually for 3 years. So there's a couple of things in the question that we need to unpack before we can go through and answer these things. First off, we need to know that the $2,500 that he borrows, that represents the present value of uh, of how much he's actually borrowed. Okay, 5%, that's the rate. Okay, so the rate is always given to you as 5% per year. Okay, the fact that it's compounded semi-annually means that this is going to be a compound interest question. So when it says it's compounded semi-annually means 2 times per year. Okay, and that's going to happen 3 times. Okay, so over 3 years. So just one thing to quickly highlight. Again, things can be calculated annually. Okay, so if we compound them annually, that happens once. If we compound them semi-annually, that happens twice per year. It can also be compounded quarterly, and that means that happens 4 times per year. That could happen monthly, okay, and that would mean 12 times per year, or weekly, 52 times per year. Okay, those 5 options in terms of compounding periods per year are usually the most common, at least in terms of the questions we've done. There are others that are included there as well. You could compound things bi-weekly, and that would be once every 2 weeks, so that would be 26 times per year, and so on and so forth. So if we look at question A, it says how much will he owe at the end of the loan? Now, whether or not you're calculating future value or present value, one thing that you should always do is identify your A, P, I, and N values. Okay? So in this instance, we're trying to figure out our future value. A represents the future value. So we don't actually know how much he's going to have to pay in 3 years. That's what we're trying to figure out. We know that he borrowed $2,500. That's the principal amount. Okay. The I value, again, I is always the rate divided by the number of compounding periods per year. So we know that the rate here is 5%. Okay, so 5% as a decimal is 0.05. Okay, so my I value is 0.05 divided by the total number of compounding periods per year. And we talked about how the word semi-annually means that it's compounded 2 times per year. So my I value is actually equal to 0.025. Okay? My N value represents the total number of compounding periods over the life of the investment. Okay, so in our case, we know that it's compounded 2 times per year, and it's going to be in there for 3 years. So it's compounded 2 times per year for 3 years, so 2 times 3, that means that my N value is actually 6. So the formula that I need to use for this is A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the exponent positive n. So now that I've figured out over here on the left what my A, P, I, and N values are, I'm just simply going to substitute them into the equation. So I'm looking for A. My P value is 2,500. And I've got 1 plus 0.025, all raised to the exponent 6. I could simplify that by actually adding together that which is in the brackets. So 1 plus 0.025 is 1.025, and that's raised to the exponent 6. So now I just go through and I calculate this. So my A value, if I plug this into my calculator, I'm going to do 1.025 raised to the exponent 6, all times $2,500. So that's going to give me a final answer of $2,899 and approximately 23 cents. So the value of what he owes at the end of the loan is actually $2,899.23. That's what he has to pay back to the bank. Okay. The next question says, how much did he pay in interest? So again, interest is always the cost of borrowing. How much money do you have to pay to actually borrow the money? So in this instance, the interest, oh dear, let's try that again. The amount of interest that he has to pay is going to be, I is going to equal his final value, his A value, minus his present value. Okay, so we know from above right here that the A value is equal to 28.99.23, and we know his principal value, the amount of money that he borrowed to start off with, was $2,500. So we're going to subtract $2,500 from the final amount. Okay, and when we do that, we discover that the cost of him borrowing this money over 3 years was $399.23.